Welcome back. I'm talking with Mark Bodman, ServiceNow CSDM's product manager and inventor, about the problem that a lot of companies have when they're faced with the need to migrate to CSDM, which is, what do I do about it? How do I go about this? And a lot of them have, as some of my customers do, advisors who have been helping them with ServiceNow issues related to its initial purpose of being a ticketing system or something like that. But now there's more to it, and people are unsure of how to go forward. So I spent some time with Mark on a Zoom call while he was in Singapore and I was in England to dig into this problem a little bit. And if you hang with us till the end, you will hear some pretty detailed advice from Mark about exactly what you should do and where you should look for help. Two questions about that. Why do they care about that now and they didn't care about it before? And also, what should they actually do next?
The reason this is becoming a hotter topic, there's two factors. One is that the number of products that we have now in the platform that work with this data has grown exponentially. If the data is not in the right place, these products won't work. It's black and white. It's like we got customers that are buying hardware asset management that don't have the CMDB in the right shape in order to leverage the CI data and understanding where the assets are. Without that data, hardware asset management is kind of an island again. You know, it doesn't have any bearing in terms of who's using that asset. Is it even being used? Is it in production still, or or did somebody steal it 5 years ago? That's number one. Okay, is that you have to look at it from that perspective. Now, what's interesting is that some of the information about the application is useful in the help desk context. And what I would
Yes.
say is knowing how that application is constructed, having the blueprint, so to speak, understanding the key stakeholders that created it. So if I have a very vexing problem, I can actually contact somebody that knows about it. There's certain information that they do want. When the customers are, now that everything is working together in a certain way on our platform, that means what they've implemented that's disconnected today on the platform or connected in some wonky way needs to be refactored into our common model. Then they will be compatible with one another.
And I've got this context. The one I'm thinking of right now has a ticketing system that's been heavily configured. They've had it for a number of years. It's probably owned in some infrastructure team. They want to do APM. They can't do APM with the system that they've got for the reasons you described. So they're exporting things from the CMDB to some kind of BI system to try to restructure it so they can learn more about life cycles. They want to do APM, and this is also true of my customer in Europe that I'm working with, which is a completely different business, exactly the same problem, which is the surprise deprecation of something.
Yep.
And then they say, well, we're going to have to do this expensive project to replatform or upgrade this app. And they say, there's nothing wrong with the app. Well, there may not be anything wrong with the app, but there's a big problem with the tech stack, and we're going to have to.
Yeah.
And people are always going, oh my God, that's not in the budget. What? And that's the issue. That's why they
I
want to
know.
do this.
It happens over and over again. And I
So
described some of my challenges with that too.
APM is seen as a solution to at least not being surprised, and maybe making different decisions that will take you to a less expensive place.
Yes.
But they can't do it on their existing platform.
That's the reason CSDM got created, or why I was interested. When I first got here, I designed a very sophisticated process that required information coming from very different tool sets that needed to come together in a very specific way, the way I built the tool. And
Right.
it was like asset management provides information about the life cycle of each software product version that we have, and also its vendor and all that. The IT operations management discovery provides information about where these things were just installed, and also who was using them was provided by the IT service management folks. And it's like the combination of those three, areas were very, very powerful in providing that story that in the application space to say, hey, where is this old technology and who's using it anyway? And with that information, your app portfolio is powerful in terms of you can say, I'm just doing a query to bring all this to the surface, and I just need to know now where are we going to, make our changes.
Run the reports and set up
Yeah,
the
yeah.
way.
But
Yes.
I built that 8 years ago, Dan. And 99% of the customers didn't have the data to do it, to make it
Well,
work.
as it always is.
We came out with CSDM in order to build the products that integrate, seamlessly natively. That's the best way to describe it, right? Different areas of work have to have a way to integrate with each other. And so that was where CSDM was born. It was a necessity in how our products have to coexist and help each other on the platform. Because most of my customers had started much earlier than when before this existed, they came up with their own model. And we have changed our philosophy. We weren't called ServiceNow at first. We were called, I think it was GlideSoft or something like that. The company was all about creating workflow and forms and lists in the cloud. That was it. And the first set of workflows we created were service management workflows, like ticketing, right? Help desk.
Yeah.
We relabeled the company and renamed the company. And so now we didn't have a lot of prescription in how to do it. I mean, even ITIL was around at the time, but it was still sort of new and it wasn't very prescriptive either. It was more descriptive.
Yes.
And so what happened was every customer did their own thing. Fast forward 10, 15 years, and now we've got a very prescriptive model that works if you want all these different teams and products on the platform to work together. But 99% of the customers don't have that by default. So they're all facing the same challenge now, and they have to refactor and sometimes re-platform because what they created has been so far diverged from where we are. Uh, and it is a sophisticated model because we're going to create what is seemingly redundant in the model, but it's different because different stakeholders need their own space. They need their own existence in the model in order to express and do their work before somebody does their work downstream. The idea of coexisting is strong on our platform, which is why, I came here and many customers are gravitating to it. It has to be more seamless, and that's where CSDM gets us there.
What should they do next? If you put yourself
Yeah.
in the place of the person who owns this platform, the company that owns this platform, how can I tell without spending a fortune on whether this CSDM journey means that I need to create a greenfield instance and rebuild everything on the greenfield instance,
Yeah.
or maybe what I've got can be migrated in a more gradual way
Yeah.
how do you define that? Where is that line?
There's a couple factors that go into that. One is the level of customization that you've got, right? So how far deviated from out of the box are any of the processes, forms, products, that a data model that we've provided given today, right? Given the picture of what we do today. There's ways to measure that. We have these analysis tools on the back end that you can run that provide a gap analysis or customization analysis score.
So if
Uh,
I'm that customer, how do I get access to that?
yeah, they're called the Data Foundations dashboards. And when you download those, I think they're shipping as of a couple releases ago out of the box now. You just have to run the job that collects the metrics, and it analyzes your data structures and to a degree, not everything, but
Right.
it gives you some semblance of level of customization, or we call it user tables and user attributes. So if you've gone into the application record and created 190 unique attributes, that's pretty custom. So that's one tool that we use regularly, right? We did 400 projects with customers last year alone and went through that process with them. The outcome of that is informative on what do you do next, right? If it's so far gone, it might be one of those, let's start from scratch. Now, that really depends on a few things. How much is running on the platform right now? I mean, if this thing is like the center of everything that you're doing, it's going to be hard, changing the wheels on the bus while it's running, type of thing. The second factor that goes into that are the people that created all this stuff still around, so we can unwind it, knowing what we're unwinding. And if you have good documentation, that's actually useful as well. But most
Yeah,
people don't have that either. So
my experience is anything like that was built more than 6 months ago, it doesn't actually help to have the people who wrote it because they don't remember.
that's right. So that's right. So the further, out of whack it is from an assessment point of view, the further you would probably make the decision to, cut and run and redo. It's a process. I would say it's at least 3 meetings. So one is like deer in the headlights. What's CSDM? Oh my God. And they usually don't ask any questions. They're just absorbing, right? It's almost like, what is this thing? How is it, when you say application service, what is it in my world? Because I don't have that. I didn't use that. You know what I mean? I don't
Right.
have that concept. Then the second meeting is they start to go through some examples. Like, we do things this way. How would I do it there? Right. So how is this idea accommodated in this new way, in this new model? And then the third meeting is usually a fine tuning of that understanding, or maybe an iteration on that with another example. So, what about microservices? What about platforms? What about this? Right. So there's like 5 or 6 major sort of patterns that exist that I've documented as far as example models for people to actually use. And once you learn the patterns, right, as any good EA knows, they're kind of cookie cutter.
So
So
are these patterns something that people can get access to?
yes, they're on our YouTube channel, and I've had them out there for 5+ years. The
Okay.
issue is that it becomes kind of buried, right, in all the other muck that we have out there. But
When you say a pattern, is that like something that could be a web page or a downloadable document? You don't need to watch a video to learn about it, do you?
they are downloadable in our A training. So we have a CSDM training on Now Learning. So if you just go to Now Learning and search CSDM, boom, they're there.
Right.
And there's another thing that we have called Now Create. Those same examples and about 50 other ones are in PowerPoints that were created by the field. So I provide some oversight on that, but the field is creating all kinds of other stuff that come into that book of examples.
So if I'm that customer, is it possible there's a lot of free resources for understanding my problem from
Yeah.
ServiceNow that I don't know about and that my consulting company is trying to sell me?
That's right. And one of the challenges, as you point out, some of the consulting companies aren't aware either. So they're leading the customer off into the ditch, I call it.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things we're introducing by the end of the month is a new mainline certification and training curriculum. CSDM is going to be part of that. There's going to be also CMDB training, because we're also training folks on how to bring data in from sources so that you don't create all kinds of crazy duplicates, or where does it need to go anyway. The old training that we have for CSDM is out of date, doesn't have some of the updated things that we're doing now, and version 5 stuff. That certification is going to be rolled out to every partner. And my leadership is adamant that partners are going to be required to be certified in this. And it's called what we call a mainstream certification, which means it has to be refreshed every year.
And what is it
So
called?
it is going to be called the Data Foundations Training and
Okay.
Certification.
Is that something customers can do as well?
Absolutely. But we don't really control whether the customers are going to get trained or not, but we can put some, controls in there for partners for you to show up on the the official trained partner list. If they don't go through that, they won't show up on that list.
Okay. But you can't do anything to prevent people from getting rando advice from anybody who claims to
Dan,
know about it.
yeah, it's how it is out in the Wild West,
I do, I do.
Yeah, there's nothing to ensure that the folks that are operating on you are qualified.
What you've told me before is that a lot of the consultants who are helping them with it don't understand CSDM. I've got one customer in Canada who is struggling with this, and their ServiceNow consulting helpers are one of the big consulting companies. I don't have any idea who the people are who are working with them, but I already know for sure. These are people in that consulting company who specialize in ITSM and ITIL and stuff like that. And the company's saying to them, I want to migrate to this CSDM thing, but tell me how to do it. The other thing I know about that consulting company is that their motivation is maximize billable hours.
Yeah.
So they will figure out a way to advise the client that may or may not get them on that journey because they may not actually have the knowledge to take them there, but it will certainly maximize the billable hours.
It's a common challenge that I get every day, to be frank. It's part of what we're addressing in our new training as well.
If I'm that customer, can you sort of give me a ballpark idea of how much work it's going to be if I have to re-platform and migrate? What size of thing is that?
So to migrate, oftentimes if they've been around for 10 years and haven't really done much, other than their own customization, then re-platforming, getting a clean instance out of the box instance of ServiceNow up and running to see how it works today, because it's
Yeah,
probably going to be foreign to you. So you got to almost like learn your product over again. Here's what it looks like today out of the box, guys. So there's a learning experience, right? You got to say, okay, this is how they do things nowadays. It's like getting a new car and learning how all these new buttons and gadgets work, right? Self-driving cameras. I don't know how to drive that way if I've never done it. um,
yeah.
and then
Trump getting into his Tesla.
yeah, yeah.
This is
But
full
I
of
mean,
software.
so it's like my dad gets these new cars. He doesn't know what to do, right? It's just one big screen. I was like, how do I drive this thing, right? Where's all the gadgets and buttons? So that's one thing. The second thing you can do is we call it like a reverse demo is getting sold the product over again. It's almost like you have to go through a sales cycle to get demos and see how things work today and how they're supposed to work. And then
Right.
once you do that, it goes down to we have three methodologies we're using right now. One is called outcome centric. So the use case that you just described is the outcome they want. They want to be able to have this application and have all this other connected information to provide this, an analytic. That requires certain stuff to be done behind it. And so just a narrow focus on just those things that need to be implemented just for that outcome. Don't worry about service management right now. Don't worry about integrated risk and GRC. Don't worry about SecOps and all the other stuff you can do. Let's just do that. So that gives you focus on an outcome and everything that is necessary behind it. That's
Right.
one methodology. The second methodology is what we're calling domain centric. So if the EA team is sort of driving this, they have a bunch of elements in the data model and functionality in product that uses that data. So they just work on that domain of data, like their information object, business capabilities, and all the stuff that surrounds that. They can just focus on that area of the model. Now that doesn't get them the outcomes that they want necessarily. It just solves that data model and
You
that's
say
it.
the EA team. Who's EA team are you talking about?
Anybody. So, or if it's a service management team, they're only focused on the service
Yeah.
definitions. Or if it's operations, they only focus on the CIs, not the assets or the, other things that come into it. So
Okay.
areas of the model that are very isolated, but that doesn't get them usually a really nice outcome. And the third methodology is what we're calling this crawl, walk, run, fly methodology, which has been out there for a long time as well. The challenge in that is that it's not outcome centric. It just says you need to have a business app connected to an app service connected to CIs. That's it. And so it doesn't necessarily say you're going to see all this, output from it once you get there and the data model is in the right spot. So, but what it does is it brings the enterprise architecture team into context with the operations team so that you're getting to understand each other's space, the fact that these data models are connected in a very specific way, and you need to create a process to be able to go through the app deployment, development, deployment in a way that creates the records in a connected manner, if that makes sense.
So, well, partly, but if you're a relatively small company, you might not have an EA team.
Right. So that means who's going to drive and own the APM space and all the other information that surrounds it.
Well,
So it,
there's somebody who wants to own that, but in you could be kind and call them an EA team. There might just be somebody in sort of finance or something who just wants better information. That may be the driver.
but
So
this is where we find a lot of gaps in the orgs because nobody quotes unquote owns that space.
yes.
So it's not just implementing the data once and now you see the report because it needs to be managed in perpetuity.
So let me ask again, because what size of work is this to get them completely? Well, there's
Yeah,
two sizes of work. One is to just build something that gives them the outcome they want and maybe disconnected from other things they're still doing on the old instance.
that's
The
right.
other is fully migrate and turn the other one off. What are we looking at there?
So it goes back to the level of customization they've got, and if they've still got the folks around that have knowledge about what the crazy stuff they've done over the years. That's the first real thing, right? And only like 4 cases, 5 cases maybe over the course of my career here that I've told people to just cash out of their existing instance and start from scratch. It was so bad. 194 custom attributes on a business application, as an example.
Right.
And yeah, so we have other ways of providing that information, not custom attributes on one table. So there, it was so far unrecognizable, it didn't make any sense to try to unwind it because the teams were three
So you're saying
generations ago.
usually you're going to do some kind of migration in place.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
and the interesting thing is that depending on what they used, if they created their own custom tables, it's easier because we charge for your custom tables now. It's almost like there's a monetary reason to do that
okay.
because you'll get out of the custom table, you get to the out of the box table, which we don't charge you for using. So it's a product, it becomes an easier argument to make, right? And depending on how many reports, so we have analytical tools that'll look at a table, okay, one table at a time. It's a little arduous if you have 30 tables to look at, but it's very useful. And because everything's written on the same platform, we can see every report, every form, every workflow that touches that table. So if you need to migrate that table, right, this gives you a scoping of how much work it might be. And this tool is in our community as a downloadable utility that you'd run, and it would do this analysis for you. Some of my colleagues in our expert services side have created from that tool, they built a story estimator as well. So they actually estimate how long it would take now, given the scope of what we find, and they write a story in with story points that estimates
Right.
the amount of work.
So let me ask you a different question because you're not going to tell me how big this is.
It depends.
How much
Yeah.
work is it to get to the point where you know how much work it will be?
Well, when you run the Data Foundations dashboard, that gives you one certain set of indicators. The second thing is if you run this utility on the target tables that you need to migrate, right, that you need to fix,
What is
this will
that
give you
utility called?
that is a utility that's on our community. I'd have to look it up because
Send me
it's
a link. Keep going.
yeah,
Use the
but
utility and it tells you,
it tells you how much of the platform uses that particular table that you're interested in migrating.
right.
And it'll outline it, right? Here's how many reports, here's how many. And what happens invariably, you'll go back to say, oh, we got 30 reports. How many people are using these? Nobody.
Yes.
There's probably 2 of them. They were a point in time report, right? So you pull the thread on this sweater and you start to find out, well, it's not a big deal anyway.
You're really describing an enterprise architecture project
Yes,
to figure out how to design this migration
that's right.
and how big is it? What about the data? A lot of it is about the data,
Yep.
but a lot of it is also about the business
You
practices.
That's right. And just like EA breaks it into plateaus, right? You might need to get there incrementally.
Yes.
You can't move all of the stuff that you want to move overnight. You're going to have to piecemeal it. The other way that I usually talk about is taking your data. Let's say you have, I don't know, 3,000 business apps that are in the wrong spot or improperly documented, right? Things that have to be unwound and corrected. You might take a portion of that, let's say everything in the cloud, basically, let's say you have 20% of that's in the cloud. Start with the cloud stuff because it's easier to migrate that workflow, the information sources, the folks that work in the cloud. You're sort of scoping down the number of records that you migrate at a time into the right place. Usually they're the new stuff people are working on every day. So you got active, people that know what's going on. CI/CD pipelines where you can automate some of the steps in the process, right? Creating the app service is a real pain. I have a customer that's creating these things now, which are a logical construct. They're doing it in our CI/CD pipeline. So every time they go to deploy an instance of their thing, they update our system with a new record to describe it. And
Mhm.
then when all the information comes in from the cloud, it has a place in order to be referenced, right, into some more logical context.
Okay.
but you've now made the process much more efficient and the data management problem more automated. That does require interfacing with the DevOps teams, saying, hey, there's an API I want you to call every time you do a deployment. You have a CI/CD pipeline. Yep, I got an orchestration. I use Puppet, Chef, blah, 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 blah. And then you could just say, okay, can you insert these steps along the way? And now we've got a nice integrated information, which I don't have to manually do anymore.
That's about keeping things up to date, but you have to have a target to put the data into that makes sense first.
Well, that's right. That's part of the upfront learning process to say, here's the proper structure. The analysis gives you sort of a delta, a gauge. Understanding the target, is the other thing, because you have to train everybody on some of the new terms, some of the new structures. Wow, this looks a lot more sophisticated. It is, but it is necessary for the processes and automation, because it's sophisticated because certain processes will naturally provide certain information in a certain way. So it needs to be connected from those natural sources, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I'm thinking about sort of a reverse Pareto thing. 80% of your customers are probably too small to have sort of easy access to competent help with this.
Yeah, a lot of it is self-service. We have this now advisory as a service kind of thing called Impact, and some of these Impact offerings are self-guided. So you would get access to some of the guidebooks that our internal folks use, playbooks, and so you can do the self-managed migration yourself.
So if I'm a ServiceNow customer working through a ServiceNow partner, do I have to work through the partner to get access to these things? Is that how that works?
The guided stuff is available on Now Create that I described earlier. So
right.
there's about 50 there's about 50 things you can download that help you along the way. There's a lot of material out there that's been built around this. I would say an army of folks that have taken our output of describing CSDM and made it more of a rote process in order to help customers out internally or to provide guidance for them to use on their self-service.
See, that's really helpful. No, that's a video. I think a lot of people will be interested in that.
The funny thing is I do a lot of whack-a-mole, like things just come on my plate and I've got to get them off my plate pretty quickly. A lot of what I do is I point them to these resources, which is why they're seen so much, Dan. So the downloads of this stuff is phenomenal. One of the reasons I created the chat GPT that I did is that I'm feeding it some of this knowledge so that you have an answer machine that'll give you that guidance as well as where to go get more. Like
have
I
you
have
got any
system.
bandwidth to just type out a little list of the key things that you've been telling me about? Just 5 or 6 things people should go find out about.
I answer this question so often, Dan. It's in my signature. It's one of my signatures. So I'm gonna create an email to you, Dan.
Great. Yep. All right.
Okay. So this is just one of my signatures, and I deleted the stuff that's internal, and this is what most organizations want to know. So this is the playlist of all the YouTube videos. We got the white paper links. There's an executive brief video here if you just want to know executive level detail. There's a community forum. There's a lot of chatter on there, and there's a workshop video on the CMDB, which is it's a 3-hour video. Okay, so it's more of a learning thing. And there's product marketing, and then Impact is what I was talking about. These are packaged offerings to do the assessment that we just walked through. So we did 400 of these last year with customers that wanted to get their foundation data properly in shape. So this focuses only on the foundation data. This looks at everything and gives you a gap analysis and some advice on what to do.
Right.
Tune up your CMDB is very specific to CMDB, more or less your record keeping. Like you got a high degree of redundancies, or you've got a lot of records without a primary key, stuff like that. Data management and governance accelerator, which teaches you how to do data governance and management on the platform. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So these expert services are folks that actually put their hands on. These folks will actually do the entire assessment for you and do the gap analysis for you, and give you some pretty deep reports. These guys will take a couple of examples that you identify and refactor it into the CSDM format. So these are a la carte. and customers can just buy a package which does that. Okay.
Okay.
Store apps and components. So these are connectors. A lot of companies have built their own ways of bringing data in. We have 75 connectors from common sources of data that they could just download, configure a little bit like credentials, and then they're off to the races. The dashboards that I talked about are here. So the health dashboards that give them an idea of, their metrics. And there's a video link on how they're used. Uh, Site SRO applications. I can't remember what that one is. The app service registry process is really the pain in the ass. That's where we actually have APIs now that are available. This is a manual step in the process that you can ask your DevOps teams to do. Down below, there's an API down here that I'll get to that cover the automation steps instead if you want to do that. The training, version 3, version 4 update, and some product views. These product views tell you how the products use the data. So if I want to use APM or asset management, this gives you a breakdown on how those products create or use that data. The lab is a self-service lab to teach you how to use the products. There's like 13 different products installed on that lab, and it walks you through creating and using the data using those products. Now you may not be entitled to all those products, and some of these products are out of the box and free. It just teaches you, instead of doing this manually, there's better ways. The workspace overview and the workshop and CSDM examples are the material that I was talking about that are self-service. You can do your own workshop based on what we do above, right, as a service, but you can download the workshop and get up and running and do your own version of it. This is stuff the partners are actually using as well to do their own. They'll take this, right, and they'll create their own version, own branded version of the workshop. Hopefully it's true to what this one does, but not always the case.
Okay.
The documentation is still out there. Migration guidance there's a doc on that. There's the script that we were talking about earlier, Dan, that gives you the analysis of the impacts.
Okay.
The product views are the examples like those. I call them patterns, architecture patterns, but basically they're different, views on how the data is used in the documentation site. The app service wizard and API is really that's the hard part. That's how we connect into the DevOps process or a manual step in the process to create each instance of an app. That's what app services really represent. And we've changed some names in CSDM 5 to make that more apparent, but it doesn't affect app service directly. The query builder is how do you do sophisticated analysis for reporting purposes across the model. So how do I connect a business capability down to business app, to each instance, to each CI, to each piece of software? You can build a query using out-of-the-box query tools. How you do that is documented here. There's a knowledge article on more resources that we have out there that's been kept up by other folks. I don't really have visibility on everything in there. And there's industry references down here, and you recognize some of those, like the TBM mapping to CSDM. That's going to get an overhaul. There's a bunch of buy-in mappings and other framework mappings in the YouTube channel that I mentioned earlier. And then there's of course, some of the IT for IT stuff that we work on as well, and digital product stuff.
Fantastic.
Yes.
That's really helpful.
The reason I put all those videos out there, the reason I put that, in my signature now is because the number of times this comes to me is astronomical.
Well, this is really helpful because if you say, well, just go watch 100 hours of video, you'll know, then they won't. But maybe they can watch an hour of video and go to the 4 or 5 links that you've talked about and get some
Yes.
value.
Yeah, and this will help in terms of just getting to the right place for the right thing. The field has my links or resources as well, and that's been embedded in different places and evolved.
The end customers need this, and either because they need to learn some of this themselves or because they need enough knowledge to keep their advisors honest.
And the good thing is, like, Impact and Expert Services have now packaged offerings to help customers based on this material that we put out there for everybody, right? So they've gone the extra mile to help kind of front end and be sort of a standardized approach to this. So it's now much more repeatable, much more scalable. Now, just like consultancies, right? You may get somebody that knows what they're doing one day, and another day you may not have somebody that knows what they're doing yet. When I'm choosing a partner, when I'm choosing individuals to work with me on this particular project, my suggestion is interview them. Have they done this before? What was the outcome? Can I talk to them? Can I have a reference, right? It's like
Yeah,
any other purchase decision you make. You got to see the track record to know that this one's going to be okay.
that's the next meeting. We can talk about how people get hired. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And there is a path forward. And with the new training we're coming out with, new certification, there's, opportunities for the latest stuff to come in. And also we're always making improvements, right? There's always more here coming.
All right, good.
All
I
right.
gotta go. I gotta go.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. See you later.